So why are you struggling to maintain a non-stick finish to your cast iron or carbon steel? Hey, I'm Jed, this is Cook Culture. So today I wanted to talk about keeping your awesomely built up non-stick finish on your cast iron or carbon steel pan. If you buy a pre-finished cast iron pan, like most all cast iron comes with a factory preseason, you get to start off in a fairly good spot. But what I'm finding is that some people are struggling to maintain their non-stick ability. They can look good up front, they're building it initially and it's looking great, and then something happens fairly quickly that degrades the pan. And what I've come to realize, the culprit here is heat. So too much heat is a bad thing for your non-stick finish. And using a cast iron and carbon steel pan should allow you to have some variance in heat. You should be able to do things more on a delicate sort of heat. And carbon steel, as we all have seen, people using open flame wok cooking, that sort of thing, you should be able to use a high heat. And so there's a delicate kind of balance of what you can and can't do for your seasoning using heat. So heat sources are important. Using gas can be more detrimental to your non-stick finish on your carbon or cast iron than electric or induction. I find just the flames that can lick out the outside can sometimes just add more buildup and degradation to your inside finish. So high heat flames licking can be a problem. So I highly suggest try not to bring your flames too far up around the outside of your pans. But generally for all cooking, what you're cooking and at what heat will end up being a problem. So if you're cooking very liquidy, oily type foods, as we've seen, when people are wok cooking and they've got quite a bit of oil or moisture and they're at a very high heat and there's a lot of moisture and steam coming out, you're being quite good to that finish because you've got so much moisture, so much liquid. You're at a high heat, of course, but it's not being damaging at that point. When we've got high heat and we start to lose the moisture and you start to cook that seasoning, that's where the degradation comes. So the damage is in going past a usable heat point and having little liquid. So your pan and your hob, your cooktop, will have a certain kind of point that it's going to work well at. A bit of history is that most of us grew up using aluminum-based nonstick cookware. That allows you to cook kind of whatever way you want. If you cook at a high heat with an aluminum-based nonstick pan, you will have reasonably okay results. You won't get sticking degradation initially onto the pan. Over time, high heat destroys nonstick. That's what kills it quickly. People were used to chucking a nonstick pan out in 6 months, 8 months, a year and just going and buying a new one and continuing to cook at a high heat. If you transfer that cooking method directly to using carbon steel that you've built a really nice patina on, you will damage the surface. So it's not like nonstick that will take more of that punishment, but then when it degrades, it's garbage. You will degrade your nonstick surface that you've built up quite quickly, and then it will peel and flake or just have mottled spots to it, become really dry quickly, all the problems that come along with high heat. And you'll have to constantly be trying to build that surface, and you'll just be fighting to keep that surface happening. I talk sometimes in seasoning about 2 steps forwards and 1 step back as you build. You'll get to this point where you've got a really nice seasoning and you start taking 2 steps backwards and 1 step forward. You just lose the battle, and your pan just is hard to use all the time. And what I've come to learn from talking to people and making suggestions and people going off and then following my suggestion of reducing the heat is that they win. And so I've come to learn that firsthand, is that is the win for most people. If you're struggling to maintain a good nonstick finish and your pan just being in that sweet spot all the time and you're just sailing along and everything's just great, that is what a lot of people and most people have. If you're in that category of this sucks and it's really hard and everything I'm struggling with, I highly recommend reduce your heat, like by 20%, say, somewhere around there. Wait for a longer preheat. Allow the pan to slowly heat up. Start your cooking, use enough moisture. You know, I highly recommend adding water as you start to cook with cast, just to help, you know, steam and cook things through. You know, it's helped us stop cooking with too much oil. And then give your pan enough time to cook. Be more patient as you're cooking at a more of a medium temperature and allow things to kind of cook through. If you are looking to, you know, get some sort of a browning, you know, use the broiler. You know, use your piece of cast, put it in the oven, get your broiler instead of cranking the surface of your pan up and damaging your seasoning. Okay, so to visually show you what I mean, I'm gonna cook some chickpea and onion for little fritters, or maybe like a little pancake. And I'm going to cook them both evenly, same amount of time, working obviously the hotter pan more often. So I'm trying not to burn it because I'm going at a high heat. I'm trying to cook quite rapidly. I may pull it off sooner if I think that it's fully finished, but I'm gonna be cooking, you know, the other one in a 6 and giving it more time to preheat, more time to cook through, and just being calmer with it. And hopefully we'll see the difference of the surface when we're done. Okay, so these two pans, both an 11-inch Dubai Mineral B pan, equally around the same sort of age, equally about seasoned. One is on a 6 on the left and an 8 on the right. I'm gonna put in a small amount of grapeseed oil. I'm going to wipe it around on both of them. This one is already starting to smoke. This guy is not. They have been preheating for probably 4 minutes. So they're both really hot. This is my batter that I'm using. I'm gonna make maybe like so. Do 2 in each. Okay, so even right away, the sizzle to the cooler pan sounds to me better. So not so aggressive in its sizzle. And I am going to get those guys on there. So this is a combination. I made a liquid combination of flaxseed, water, onion, garlic powder, salt, and a bit of maple syrup, and some curry powder. And then I mashed in chickpeas, put in some more raw onion, and some oat. So that's what's in the mixture here. So little patties that I will make and put onto a salad later on. So these guys here already got some, like a lot more moisture and smoke coming off of here. So I just want to take a look. See, this is premature, but yeah, just already got a bit of browning around that side, which that's not a bad thing right now. And this guy here, way too premature, but nothing. So I wouldn't normally flip them so quickly. As you can see, a bunch more smoke coming off of here. This is not like, this is bothering me. I like creating this smoke like this is just problematic. You know, this to me just looks great. The way in which the oil in the pan is looking great. This is starting to dry out quite a bit. So visually, it's not looking awesome. So I'm gonna just continue to let that cook. I'm gonna do a little bit of a close-up here, and you know, you'll see more of what I'm talking about right close up, and we'll just let it cook and see where we get to. Okay, so this guy, okay, well, an 8 is definitely way too high for that pan. Right, and we're getting some nice, even cook through on these guys at a 6. They're taking a lot more time, but this guy, you know, these guys are burnt for sure. But the point of what I'm trying to get to here is how we're treating the surface. So those guys are done. I'm gonna turn that off. I'm gonna continue to cook these guys and let them finish cooking through. Okay, so those have been on for like another 5 or 6 minutes more. So there's a lot more cooking time that have gone on to those guys. The point that we're talking about here is that we now want to inspect these surfaces. We want to look at these guys as we clean them up and just see how they finished up from cooking too high of a heat. Okay, so this is one that was on a 6. Hot pan. Little bit of texture to it I can feel. But just some simple rubbing on there. And that comes clean really easily. So that one's done. So the hotter pan, it's been cool for a while now. So a little bit more. I just scrub a little bit harder to get that off, not much harder though. And it kind of smooths down quite simply. All right, so that guy is also done. We're gonna dry those up, get them back on the hob, and post-season them. Okay, so done both these guys. And it's interesting, because when you look at them, this guy that we cooked at a 6 is nice and even. We had a little bit, one stuck, I don't know if you noticed, it kind of stuck on there a little bit when I took it off. And you can see that, I'll get even a better close-up. You can see where it pulled away a little bit of that seasoning on there as it got sticky. But here, it's got 2 big spots and a much darker spot where this seasoning is starting to kind of cook on a little bit thickly. So I'll get that a little bit closer so you can see a good visual difference there. Okay, so here we go. That's the pan that we're cooking at a 6. Got a little bit of drying, and that's to be expected coming from using the oats in there. That's it's a drying type batter. It'll absorb all the moisture from the pan. That happens when you cook pancakes and that sort of thing too on these sort of pans. This guy needs a good post-seasoning, but we haven't really stripped anything off. A little bit of a dry spot there, but nothing's really stripped. Where when we go over and take a look at this guy here, we definitely have 2 big solid marks where that high heat cooking caused some damage to the seasoning. And this will just get worse and worse if we kept cooking at that kind of heat all the time. And this wasn't the perfect example, like burning the little patties. But if you were doing something kind of meaty that had a lot more saturated fat in it, that didn't create that kind of dryness in that browning, and you're looking for that charring, you can also create this sort of damage. And that's what I was trying to replicate. So we'll do some post-seasoning, but visually here, this is not in a great spot. This is dry, but still will come back really easily with some post-seasoning. Okay, so I've got both of them on this guy was on a 7 by accident, but they should be on a 6. That's where I like to season. And I've got my seasoning paste and my trusty cloth. Yeah, it's just smoking just a little bit more. I had it on a 7 by accident. Not the end of the world, but that one is going on there. See, you don't have any real smoke, little bit of moisture coming off. But in post-seasoning is about getting thin layer on and then letting it just cook and cook and cook on, not really creating, this is more smoke than I like. That's perfect, that's a bit more too much smoke. But I've brought the heat down, it'll be totally fine, not the end of the world. And that is gonna cook on there for 5 minutes. Okay, so the post-seasoning has been perfect. This pan here, everything's great. And on this guy, you can still totally see those 2 marks. So quite a substantial difference between the 2, just from using too much heat. Okay, so visually I hope that helped. It wasn't perfect because it's always when you're not trying to burn something or create that problem where you do. So I can be cooking whatever. Like the other day I was cooking some carrots and some onions in a Phoenix pan, and I put it on a 5, left it to cook, but I went and did something and I came back an hour and a half later and I had super cooked onto that pan, and I'd taken all of that seasoning off. So it wasn't like it was super hot, but it just sat there and it just carbonized and cooked all that food and it killed it. So it can happen in many different ways. You don't intend to do it. Today I was trying to intend to do it. It was a little bit of a struggle. I did overcook and burn the fritters on the higher heat. I was trying not to burn them, but they did burn quite quickly. But the end result was what I was aiming for, is that I did degrade that nonstick surface, and it's now, quite weak, and I've got to spend some time to build it up. With the other ones, the fritters were great. Between that time and now, I've had my salad, I put the fritters on them, and they tasted great. Everything worked out beautifully. The nonstick is still in great shape. I post-seasoned both pans, and the one that I did at the medium heat is great. Going forward, I've got it on baby, the one that I did at high heat. So, the big message here is high heat is the culprit. So, if you're having this struggle, bring the heat down, wait longer, cook longer. My fritters that cooked well took me twice as long. So it was, patience, but it ended up giving me great results. So I hope this helps. Any questions, please throw them below, and thank you very much.